Greetings, Spirits, it's Sam here today, and I wanted to show you how I make audiobooks as part of Circle of Spears. Now, I should preface this by saying that this is just how I like to work, but there's probably a fair amount of overlap between me and the other members of Circle of Spears. So, let's get started. Okay, so firstly I'm going to walk you around my setup here. This, as you can see, is a soundproof box around my monitor, which my father made from basically just recycled soundproofing tiles. And it actually works surprisingly well. I've got a, I'm not sure if you can see that, but I've got here on the desk some markings so I can always put my microphone in exactly the same position every single time I record. Because believe it or not, that does make a huge difference, just how the microphone is oriented, or raised, or lowered, or anything like that. Okay, I'm about set up to record now, but I just wanted to show you one thing. That's the difference between recording with soundproofing and without soundproofing. Hopefully that got picked up on the mic here. Okay, so this is Audacity. It's a freely available open source audio editing piece of software, and this is what I use to record and edit the audiobooks that I make. Now, for this example, I'm going to use an excerpt from an audiobook that I've already done called The Rocks of Azerol, and you should be able to see some cover art on your screen now. Okay, so I'm all set up. I generally have a glass of water with me when I'm recording. Sometimes I have tea, although I try and avoid dairy whenever possible whilst I'm recording, because there's something about dairy which kind of makes it sound like you're a bit bunged up all the time, and that will change the quality of your voice and mean that one recording to another is not consistent. That same day, several hundred miles to the north, the subject of the document that Horace had seen was being tested in the wilds around Northcastle. Here, the government ministries had taken over a large part of the moorland and coasts for their research. And for the testing of all things scientific. Usually when recording, I'll pre-read a chapter, or even the whole book sometimes, before I sit down to record. That way it allows me to familiarise myself with the characters, make certain directorial decisions about how certain characters sound and the quality of the voice or accent, as the case may be. Now, here's the waveform of what I've just recorded. As you can see, there's a load of peaks and troughs, and here we have a large bit of silence where I was pausing between sentences. So that needs to be edited out. Also at the end here, we've got a couple of mouse clicks and extraneous noises. So I'll take them out. This is quite difficult to do one-handed, but there we go. There. The same would go for any incomplete sentences or mistakes that I find, or anything that just doesn't need to be there. So, once I was happy with it, and the chapter or section is finished, I would save it, and then I would export the audio. This would then go to one of my colleagues, who would listen to it with the text in front of them, and they would listen for any inconsistencies or mistakes or other anomalies that may have come up during the recording. This whole process is called first pass editing. What would happen next is that my colleagues, having listened to it, would set me up with a spreadsheet like this Excel document. This has examples of mistakes or inconsistencies from a chapter of Rocks of Azerol, and you can see it has a time index and an explanation of what went wrong. Sometimes it's just a single word is wrong, or there's a missing word, or there's a general paraphrase, or maybe just that the sentence needs a longer pause between the end of one and the beginning of another. These are all things that it's easy to miss during the heat of recording, as it were. So once I have all of these corrections, I'll go back to the original file and start doing the corrections from the end and work my way back to the beginning. The reason I do it this way around is because if I started at the beginning, then by the time I'd got to the end, all of these time indexes will have wavered somewhat, and it's harder to find the thing that you're actually supposed to be correcting. So, once I've done all of those corrections, I send it back to my colleagues again, and they listen through to it one last time before it gets written to the disk or finalized into its final MP3 form. This final listen through is to make absolutely sure no mistakes were missed and that there was no errors in the CD mastering process. Once all that is done, it's just a case of getting the boxes and the CDs together, and the final result should hopefully sound something a little bit like this. That same day, several hundred miles to the north, the subject of the document that Horace had seen was being tested in the wilds around North Castle. Here, the government ministries had taken over a large part of the moorland and coasts for their research, and for the testing of all things scientific. Well, hopefully that's given you a bit more of an insight into what goes into making an audiobook. Rocks of Azerol is available from our website in both download and CD form. There'll be a link to our website in the description section below. Please have a look at that to stay up to date with all the things new from Circle of Spears. If you have any questions or comments about what you've seen here today, please leave them in the comment section below, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.